In this video, I want to go over this past week's assignment dealing, of course, with time series analysis. I'm not going to go through all the potential models. I'm just going to go through and indicate the best model, and for this assignment, the best model to use was the regression slash trend analysis. Reason being, of course, that had the smallest mean squared error of 1.528, and that's what I'd indicated that I wanted you to use to identify the best model of those models that you had a choice in selecting. So what you can see here, I've already got into Excel QM, and in Excel, let's just go ahead and click that. And what you'll see over here in the left hand corner by chapter, by alphabetical, let's just click on alphabetical. We'll scroll down here to forecasting, and these were the choices, but as I indicated, I'm going to go through the one that has been already identified as the best model to use, the forecast. And let's see, we're just going to, let's just say, just put in regression, sheet name, regression. Under options, I definitely want the tracking signal. And I'll come back and I'll talk about the tracking signal. And number of periods of actual data we're putting in is 12. We'll use it as period. OK. And then up will pop the information that we have to put in. As I've already explained previously, under time series analysis, the predictor variable or independent variable is always x. It's always my dimension of time. And since we're dealing here with regression, our period, I'm just going to code it as 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12. Oops. Then come back and up here for my dependent variable, which will be my, we'll say sales. So I'm saying sales is dependent upon, in this case, whatever my time feature happens to be. And just bear with me as I put these values in. Hopefully I put them in correctly the first time, so I don't have to go back. I believe that's it. Let me just make sure that everything is entered correctly for my demand and for my independent. Okay, let me come over here, and you can see my mean squared error is 1.53. This is what I indicated on a previous video, I believe was last week, when I said that for everybody on the same page, we'll use mean squared error and read up, not down, because the 1.35 is not the mean squared error, that's the standard error. My regression equation would be, well, my intercept would be, in other words, what I'm saying here, y sales would be 62.31 plus my slope of point, we'll say 0.3 times my dimension of time. And your forecasts for the 13th quarter would simply would be 62.64. How do we arrive at that? Well, once again, we would go back to the regression equation. 62.31 plus 0.03 times 13 would give me approximately the 62.64. That would be the forecast we would use because we've identified this as the best model as such. To use. Now, looking at this particular model, one of the things I've mentioned, and this pertains to your bonus question for this past week, was that I'd mentioned in that video, I said, okay, just because we've identified the so-called regression / trend as the best forecasting model based solely on isolating on mean squared error, doesn't necessarily mean that we have a good forecasting model. What we would have to do is go back and do some back testing, i.e. taking the actual data here, and we'll go back and back test it to see if indeed it is good to use as a forecasting model. Now, keep in mind this was not part of your assignment. I'm just trying to explain and show and illustrate probably what the conclusion would be if we would go back and back test this. Okay, what I'm saying is that yes, from the standpoint of the assignment, regression trend was what you're supposed to use, identify as such. 62.64 would have been the forecast. If we would have gone one step further, if I would have said, okay, let's go one step further and let's just kind of look at how good this model, regression trend, would be or happen to be if we would do some back testing. Well, what we want to see would be these tracking signals to be within plus or minus 3. Well, as you can see, started out pretty good, and then we got to this particular period here. We jumped over 3, over 3, over 3. So we would say, well, boy, I'm not really convinced overall that of all the models, yes, of the models, regression trend, simply by the mean squared error was the best to use. But when I go back and do a back test on it, I would call it into question. I would have a question mark there. So I just wanted to let you know from the standpoint that the tracking signal was not part of this assignment. I just wanted you to be able to look at the possible methods that I gave you to identify based on mean squared error what was the best. And of course the best, yes, was the regression trend, and the forecast was 13. So it was more from the standpoint of going through this exercise, this assignment, once again on how to use Excel QM for time series analysis.